So I wanted to talk about is something related to the topic of the show today, about sex trafficking and sex trafficking victims. And my job actually implies working with victims of sex trafficking. I'm a Spanish interpreter with the Legal Aid Society in New York, and there's a division of it called the Exploitation Intervention Project, which is the goal of that is to assist people that or victims of sex trafficking that have criminal records due to that, because they get arrested, they're charged with prostitution, and there are a number of consequences, like a criminal record in the state of New York is forever. It's probably forever, and it can have immigration consequences, job opportunity consequences, and getting social public benefits, etc. So the goal of this organization is to, or this part of my organization is to clean up the criminal records and also help these victims to get public benefits, maybe get a job, adjust their immigration status. And so I'm the Spanish interpreter. So part of the process is we have to interview these people, and they have to pretty much tell their life story, how they became victims of this sex trafficking. And so basically, when I'm interpreting, I'm their voice, like literally their voice for the attorneys and the social workers that are getting this information to create, certain affidavits that we will present to a judge and a district attorney's office, so to see if they can clean their criminal records, because they were actually victims, not the perpetrators, so to speak. And the way I can tell you, and this goes to the topic of the show, that pretty much every time I've worked with these people, and I kind of know their story and how they got involved and how the operations is, none of these have anything to do with the application of these new laws that is for social media and
Backpage and Craigslist and these things, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, all these laws will do nothing to curtail the sex trafficking that goes on in the world where I work with, the type of clients that are low income. They come from Mexico, maybe from China. My Chinese interpreter colleague has to deal with that. It's just none of it is going to. I guess my instinct tells me that actually these laws are going to create an influx of trafficking that was used to be able to be in the online world to go offline, and so it's going to be even harder to track and harder to control or to prosecute. So that's the way how I'm seeing this. I think it's going to, in some ways, it might make things actually worse.
Yeah, I think that's kind of along the lines of what I was kind of concerned about earlier. Is where will they go now, and how will it, we will lose our way of tracking it, or the way we've learned.
The systems we've put in place to be able to track these people down. Yeah, absolutely.
Catch a predator.
Yeah, because a lot of the system works is and it's a big business. And for instance, here in New York, what happen is some, I guess, agent of the trafficking operation, let's say in Mexico, meets these girls, and they usually go to rural towns, so they meet these naive girls, and some of them are underage or close to or very close to the 18-year-old age, and they seduce them. Oh, you're my boyfriend, and they sort of create a relationship in the girl's mind. It's a relationship, and we'll go to the U.S. There's money, there's jobs, and they come here, and basically they come into this enterprise where they work from these houses. A lot of these girls, the traffickers actually, I guess it's rape. It's not necessarily violent, but it's rape because they force them to have sex, and so they get pregnant. So then they have a baby that also ties them to the enterprise, and that's all offline. There's no way. That's not gonna happen.
Yeah,
and on a side note, I mean, this probably is a side note. This is a topic more for the atheist experience, but most of these people that I've heard, they're religious. These girls, or sometimes transgender women, are also victims of this. They're very religious in a sense, and like a lot of the questions that come on literally is like, what did I do wrong? Because if God allowed this person to do this to me, I must done something wrong. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the topic of how religion is actually bad for this situation. But aside from that, it's just I'm actually skeptical of the intentions of these laws, because even in law enforcement here in New York City, as far as I can tell, there really is not an effort to really look into trafficking. There's just an effort just like to get these prostitutes, and there are prostitutes, and charge them with crimes. And sometimes they go the lengths to the NYPD goes to. They make these undercover raids just to get this poor girl who's trapped in a situation.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering why isn't the same effort done to infiltrate these trafficking rings and break them up and get the real big fish.
Yeah, to go after the Johns and the actual traffickers.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, I don't see that, and I see that these laws do nothing really to curtail that.
Well, I think there are two really important points here. I mean, I referenced the documentary I Am Jane Doe, which is, again, a really heartbreaking story, and no child should ever be subjected to this kind of treatment. But the laws that we're talking about, the things where, somebody might be groomed and recruited on Facebook and these different things, we're not really talking about Chinese and Mexican girls being smuggled across borders. We're talking about young, generally white suburban girls, and that's what these laws are really designed to protect. They're not going after sex trafficking. They're not protecting sex-trafficked children. They're protecting a very specific type of sex-trafficked children.
Maybe. Yeah.
It's
like
maybe, exactly.
Sex trafficking existed before there was the internet.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so to primarily focus on that, where's the data that shows that sex trafficking has actually exploded on the internet, and in what way? Because if you had that data, then you'd know exactly how to target what's going on in that sense. I'm with you. I'm not convinced that this is actually... This may be doing more harm than good, but I don't have the data for that any more than they seem to have the data for the questions that we have.
Right.
Well, which goes to my second point. I mean, these are complex laws that have to do with the emerging technological systems. And I mean, for anybody who saw Mark Zuckerberg facing Congress over the summer, they're being written by folks who have no damn business.
No fucking
You don't have
clue.
to go back that far. Go back and listen to the CEO of Google being interviewed this week by a bunch of people who have no fucking clue what the interwebs are.
What?
Yeah, I mean, it was absolutely devastating as he's explaining, like, on my iPhone, and the CEO's sitting there, I work for Google. I don't, why are you asking me this? You know, they're different
Does
things.
Google know, if I get up from here and walk over to the other side of the room, does Google know? And he couldn't give him a yes or no. And he's like, well, I think you know.
And these are the folks that are writing these complex laws.
I don't think these people should be involved in any laws pertaining to technology.
But in addition, I would say they shouldn't be involved in any laws, or at least if laws that which is goals is to curtail sex trafficking. Why aren't they going to people like my organization or other? There are lots. Mine's the only one that advocate for these victims and say, what is the best methodology to actually nail these trafficking rings? I don't see that happening. I see that it's a big show. It's theater in my point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seems to me that it can't be that hard to suss out more information about sex trafficking because clearly you have people participating on both sides of this. You have the people who are exploiting other individuals to work as sex workers, and then you have the Johns. Now, they managed to find out where to go and who to talk to and everything. So while I'm not a big fan of the let's arrest all the Johns thing, because frankly, this should all be legal, and you know, you would just be a customer. But if we're gonna try to end sex trafficking, it would seem that you could talk to the people, the guy that's got a family and decided to go out and hire a prostitute that he had no idea was a sex trafficking, get him to flip. How did you find this? How did you, where is this?
Yeah, we have like informants that they used to for drug enforcement, and they use these informants, which are people that were either drug trafficked, like minor guys, or they were users, and so they use them to get to the bigger guys, and they use them as informants, and then they have like a search warrant and they raid the place where there's all these drugs. I would say I agree with that proposition that they would use these Johns, and these Johns like, oh, you're in trouble. Well, we'll give you a break if you act as a sort of informant and you infiltrate this and get some information so we can go get the big fish in this trafficking ring.
Yeah.
Well, Randy, thank you so much for your, I guess, I don't want to say insider information, but your inside perspective.
Yeah, just the insight about everything that you've witnessed, and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm proud of it, and I'm proud of the organization I work for, and we do good work. So thank you for taking my call.
And not only that, but think for a second, how cool is this? You guys have done how many episodes of this show?
This is lucky number 13.
13. So you got a fairly new show. We're trying to get callers in, and we have someone who calls in, and their job is relevant to the topic at hand. I mean, that just shows how the reach of ACA programs and secular sexuality and stuff are growing. It's just really cool that you could be talking about something and somebody with some knowledge and expertise who works in it. Hey, let me tell you this, and
Which is, I mean, I guess just goes to show just how, I mean, this is normal. This is everyday life. This is, what we all see and hear and live through every day. And though we don't really debate with people on this show, which I know you are so sad about.
Sex is good. What do you mean sex is not good? Sex is good. Let's debate it.
Yeah. But even though we don't really debate, I think we try to come at it from a slightly different angle with just discussing the topics and discussing with people. And, I think we've helped some people too, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's an exciting thing to be a part of. And with that mandate and with an eye on the chat, it brings up for me the question of how much are these laws intended to cut down on sex trafficking? Because we've really talked around how ineffective they are, and how much was that unintentional and just poorly crafted, poorly understood, and how much of this is a direct attempt to encourage censorship?
Right. Specifically at those communities that are already fighting for their lives. Yeah,
heavily marginalized, and really in the democratization of the internet, getting to start to find their voice, and now receiving a huge pushback on that.
Right. And real quick, we need callers, please. So 512-686-0279. We also have an email address if you don't feel comfortable calling in. It is sex@atheist-community.org. Feel free to send us.
I'm sure that email address is being monitored for sex trafficking as we speak.
Yeah, seriously. Just by doing this show, I'm wondering what kind of watch list we might be ending up on.
We've already been censored a couple times, I think. Not anything major, but, just because of the topics we have.
Yeah, the nature of what we do. And, somebody asked me today as we were kind of prepping for this and talking about, sort of our fears for sex workers and these different folks. And I think it might have even been you, Megan. You were like, you're a sex therapist who is on the internet. How concerned should you? And it hadn't even occurred to me, such is my privilege, that I generally don't find myself. I mean, I was heartbroken to lose all my Tumblr porn. I'll acknowledge that. that was devastating for me. But in any sort of meaningful sense, it hadn't even occurred to me how far-reaching this could potentially get.
That you could be a victim of this legislation.
Absolutely, and we're in the early days, and I don't see it getting all the way up to me. Right. I imagine that so many other folks are going to be devastated long before that comes to pass, but it definitely feels like, especially when you look into the details of the new Facebook guidelines, that we could be headed in that direction. I mean, my counseling business has a Facebook page. You know, how much longer is that going to be the case?
We can only hope.